What up, Vurbmoto readers? Let's create a button switch. So here we are on the Dribbble popular page. I'm going to actually download this color palette. That's a pretty nifty little thing that Dribbble allows you to do, and I'm going to drag the shot into Photoshop, and we are going to create exactly what you're seeing right there, on the fly, live, right here. So let's make the canvas 600 pixels tall so it gives us some space to work with. And I'm going to create the background with a little texture. I don't have that exact texture that this person is using, so we'll just use something I already have that's in my pattern palette. And we're going to lock it. And the reason we lock it is because we don't want it moving around whenever I'm dragging layers and stuff like that around. It just gets annoying, so just go ahead and lock that. And now we're going to create the actual button itself, and I'm using the rounded rectangle with a radius of 20 pixels. And you can see that it's kind of filled me in there with the pattern, and I'll fix that here in just a little bit. Actually, I'll do it now. This is pre-recorded, so that's why I'm kind of doing a play-by-play this way. So what I'm doing there is selecting points of the rounded rectangle, and I click the A button in order to do that, and I just pull it to the right there. And now I have my button, the little inside part of the button there, and now this is where all the magic happens. Pretty much every time you're creating something is in the blending options. So I can see that it has a stroke around it. Actually, it's a stroke gradient. So I'm switching it to stroke gradient right there, and I'm going to make that angle 90 degrees, and I'm going to flip it and reverse it so the dark part is on top, the lighter is on the bottom, and now I'm going to adjust the colors. And so we're just highlighting black there, making it 90, just to give us not such a bright white. Just want it just a little bit gray, and then going to start at 90 here, and just use the arrow button and just kind of make your best judgment. Go down with it, and you're just making it darker on top. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm not going to try to be exact in this tutorial. Just showing you guys that you can build really cool stuff with in 10 minutes. You know, it's just a matter of how you use your tools. So I'm looking at the drop shadow there. It looks like they have a white drop shadow, so I'm going to just kind of replicate that. And the white drop shadow is not going to show up as good on mine because the background texture is not as dark as theirs, which I fix later on in the tutorial. But I take off the global lighting and put the angle at 90 degrees so it's vertically up and down, and I'm just adjusting the distance of it to where you can maybe see it peeking out behind that gradient stroke there. And now what we're going to do is tackle the inside part of it, the color. And this is actually where the swatches come into play that I downloaded from Dribbble, and I forgot all about them until right now. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go download those or load those into my swatch palette. So that's why I'm sitting there thinking for a second. And so now what we do is we go to the swatch palette, load swatches, go to your downloads folder, and it should be right there. It's called toggle buttons, and you can see that it's updated my swatch palette with the colors that are being used, and that's very nice. So we're going to go to color overlay and select the color. And I know it's not the darker of the turquoise because it has an inner shadow, so we select the light one and just kind of let the inner shadow do the magic there. 90 degrees on the angle, pretty much 90 degrees on all the shadows that I use. I don't ever use 120 or whatever the default is. So I'm kind of tweaking the size of it a little bit to make it look more like it's pressed in a little bit there, and tweaking the opacity just a little bit to make it pop. And that's pretty much it for the background. So now what we're going to do is create the button, which this is going to be pretty cool. I'm just lining up the height of it, so I start at the bottom of the button and then go to the very top, and then once I get to the top I just start going to the left in order to just kind of judge what size they're using. I'm not trying to be exact. Always remember to label your layers. I mentioned that in the last screencast. Just keeps things nice and neat and easy to find. And we're doing the outer portion of it right now, so I know that the gradient, the darker portion of it is at the bottom and the lighter portion is on top. And now we're going to do the drop shadow. So as you can see, it's got kind of a heavy drop shadow to make it look like it's just popping out. And so I had to tweak around with this a little bit to get it looking right, but I'm messing with the size here. And bump the opacity down so it's not too harsh, but then I notice, well, it actually is a little bit darker than that, so I'm going to bump it back up a little bit here. I'm just trying to eyeball it, moving that distance a little bit further down and calling that good right there. And so now what we do is just we just Command J, and what that does is creates the exact same, just copy and paste the same layer that's selected. And now what we're going to do is create the inner, like, pressed in area. And so I don't need a drop shadow there. Obviously it's going to be out of the way, so we take that off, and then now all we're going to do is just flip the gradient itself. And once you flip the gradient, you can see that it's kind of taken on a pressed in look. So we're going to darken it up a little bit, darken that top to where it looks more pressed in. And now we're going to just pull it in and resize it. So I'm holding down the Option Shift key as I'm doing that, so everything stays even. And watch, whenever I click return, boom, you can definitely see how it has that pressed in look. And so now I can tell that the bottom portion of it is a little bit lighter than it needs to be on the background part of the button, or just that, yeah, the bigger portion there. And so now I'm going to darken it to make it look, as you can see when I'm moving that down with the arrow button, it's got that really defined pressed in look. And that's all this stuff really is, you know. It's just messing with gradients and shadows and stuff like that. I mean, and that's what I want to show you guys in these tutorials, is that you can create these things. It's just a matter of using your tools properly. So let's do the little, I don't know what you call that, a little, I don't know, button thing, circle deal there. So we got to take away a lot of stuff here. I'm going to take away the stroke, and the drop shadow doesn't, well, the drop shadow I may need to leave that in there just to give it a little bit of a shiny effect. But really the inner shadow just needs to be bumped down, and maybe the opacity of it a little bit too. And that's pretty much it right there. That can serve for both buttons, and I'll show you what we do next for that other button. But for now, I'm going to create the off text, and whatever font you guys have. I mean, I'll use Helvetica New just because that's what everybody has on their computer. And just make it bold. Again, we'll go up to the swatch palette that we downloaded and use their colors there as a starting point. And then if I need to go darker, I can add a little white drop shadow there to give it a little shiny look. And keep that distance at 1, size 0 whenever you do that, and just bump down the opacity so it's not too harsh. And now I'm just going to adjust the font color to where it looks a little bit darker. And that is that. And so now what we do is we group all this stuff together. So I'm going to actually, it looks like I'm going to mess with this drop shadow again for some reason. I just can't get over it. Oh, I tell you what I did. I made the texture, the background texture, darker, so you can see now a little bit better that drop shadow. Okay, so I grouped everything by selecting all the layers by holding Shift and clicking the top and the bottom layer that I wanted grouped, and then Command G to group. And now I'm just duplicating that group to make my on button, and I turn the off button off and highlight everything, drag it down, and we really don't have to do much here other than just change the text and the color on the inside, and that is about it. So we'll drag the button over to the right, move on to left, and now we will start the process of changing the colors on the inside. Again, a little swatch palette coming in handy there. It's really easy, simple. Don't have to adjust anything else. The inner shadow stays the same, everything. And we'll do the same red as a starting point for the text and just use the arrow keys to bump it down to make it darker. That looks about right. And now what we'll do is we will bring back our off button and just pull it down to make it centered and nice, and that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you create button switches. Super easy. You guys can do this stuff. It's just a matter of using your tools properly, and I hope you enjoyed the screencast. I plan on doing more of these, and you guys take it easy.